Okay, here we go. Let's talk about Chapter 8. I'm going to flip through the chapter as I speak to you guys. Chapter 8 starts on page 156, Personnel Management. You got the chapter outline, objectives, key terms. Are y'all enjoying those key terms so far? There's not that many. And you may be familiar with many of these for Chapter 8 already, so that's good. Page 158 starts with the introduction. Next paragraph is determining staffing needs. That is a balancing act for any and all healthcare facilities. You really need to know what services a physician or providers are going to provide before you figure out how many personnel you're going to need and even what type of personnel. If your healthcare facility has surgeons and general practitioners and maybe PAs and nurse practitioners, you're going to need a variety of staffing to support each one of those roles. Most offices, typically because of the cost of paying for a nurse, they may have one registered nurse on staff, and the remainder staffing nurse-wise may be medical assistants. They're not uh, real nurses. Some offices even in the place of a nurse or a medical assistant, like orthopedic offices, will hire athletic trainers to work. And frankly, the reason for that is it's just cheaper. It's cheaper to pay an athletic trainer or medical assistant or nursing assistant, CNA, certified nursing assistant, versus a registered nurse. Not many offices, I'm not saying none will, but not many offices hire LPN or licensed practical nurses. Those nurses are different than registered nurses. They don't have as many privileges, and as their scope of practice is not as wide as a registered nurse. Anyway, okay. Moving on, determining staffing needs, that is important to do. You don't want to spend too much money for unnecessary staff, nor do you want to be a very busy, bustling medical office and not have enough staff. That's not fun. That doesn't make for a good day. Page 159 continues the type of staff needed. Page 160, still talking about clinical duties versus administrative duties. As a medical office manager, you will write a job description, or you may revise the current job descriptions that are in front of you. Those are ever changing. I would say they at least, I'm not sure if the book addresses this, but I would recommend addressing your job descriptions at least once a year, maybe even twice a year, just depending on how much your office and your facility changes. Um, Job description is definitely used in a disciplinary action. If I don't know my job description and my expectations because you've not provided it in detail, then you cannot hold me legally. You can't hold me accountable if I didn't know any better. That's where a job description comes in, and it's just valuable as an employee. I really do want to know what is expected of me and what my role is. Using the job description during the interview process, the bottom of page 161, absolutely. You want to be very detailed again in the job description and your expectations. You don't want to discriminate. The interview is the best place to ask somebody, are they comfortable lifting 60 pounds, or do they know how to assist with help moving a patient if somebody were to fall, or etc. Chapter 8 continues on page 162, advertising. This day and time, I promise you, online advertising is the best way to find candidates. Once upon a time, I am old enough to recall looking through a newspaper and looking for jobs. And that type of advertising is kind of obsolete today. I'm not saying it's not there, but for healthcare jobs, Indeed.com, LinkedIn, there's a website called HigherEd.com. That's usually more for teaching. But anyway, those type of online platforms are very valuable to post your jobs and find great employees. Sorry. You can even hire like a firm, or headhunters is what they used to call them, but they are people who specialize in kind of pre-selecting, pre-interviewing candidates for your job. Screening resumes, page 163, speaks to the prevalence of software today, and absolutely, For example, I happen to know the hospital I work at and their hiring process. If someone, whether it's a nurse, a doctor, phlebotomist, whomever, respiratory therapist, even environmental services person, if they submit a resume that is more than 1 page in length, those resumes do not even get scanned and looked at. So, note to self, when you are typing out your resume when you graduate, or even if you're looking for a job now, 1 page. Google current resume etiquette, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Many employers do not even look at a resume if there's more than 1 page. Chapter 8, page 164. Volunteering is one of the bullet points that jumps out on the page at me. That's a huge factor in hiring. Employers love to see when someone has volunteered or donates blood or whatever the capacity is. That says a lot about a person. Telephone screen interviews, yes, using the human resources department to screen applicants. That's what a hospital does, but if you're a small medical office, you may not have that luxury. It might be you, the medical office manager, who is interviewing. So you have to schedule the interviews, interview the applicants. That's written about on page 165. 166, illegal interview questions. Yes, you cannot ask certain things. It's a big no-no to ask certain things, so review that very, very well. One thing that is not listed there is pregnancy. You cannot ask somebody if they're pregnant. Man or woman, if a man has a pregnant wife, you can't ask about that. Because you don't want to discriminate against that person knowing that there may be an infant in the house soon. And same thing, obviously, with the woman being pregnant. You don't want to ask. Even if it's obvious, just don't bring it up in an interview, because if that person's not hired, then maybe they'll feel like you didn't hire them because of the pregnancy. So just some things should not be part of the interview questioning. Calling for references. You cannot, or a former employer cannot give more information than they should. I think the current standard right now is somebody can call and ask my former employers if they would hire me back or not. That's kind of the limit of the law. My former employer cannot go into how many days I called out sick, or how many committees I served on, or if I didn't serve on any committee. You can't get into any detail. Just simply, would you hire the person back or not? Background checks is a big deal. You do want to keep a safe environment. Um, Criminal background checks are uh, frequently checked, um, especially at higher interview, verifying education, drug screens, all types of things happen when somebody is hired. Calling to offer the employment, that is typically a medical manager, office manager doing that. Orientation is very important. That is a time period agreed upon you and the facility, that whether it's 45 days, 90 days, 6 months, it's the opportunity for you to decide if this is even the place for you, and for them to decide if you're a good fit for them. That's usually in the contract or the information that is given. So it's like a probationary orientation is when they welcome you, teach you all about their rules, their expectations, policies, benefits, etc. But then the probationary period happens. That's on page 168, 169. Developing the training programs for the new employee. That is definitely an office manager's responsibility. Employment at will, page 167. That just means there's no contract, or the contract's going to end in 6 months or every year. That means you as an employee have the right to resign, and they as a facility have the right to end your employment at any time. Different supervisory techniques, yes, for different personalities, of course. Employee evaluations, this is where the job description needs to be abundantly clear, and evaluation time needs to be clear and communicated well. Employee discipline, we never want to have to deal with that again. Set your policies, your procedures very well, detailed job descriptions. Employees can get verbal warnings, and it can escalate to written warnings. And depending on how you have your policies and procedures, then they can ultimately lead to termination if the employee does not fix what is wrong. Employee assistance programs, this is a normal offering pretty much throughout healthcare, to my knowledge. I can't think of a single place that wouldn't have this. And this comes down to mental health, substance abuse, even if you just want to quit smoking. Uh, During COVID, the employee assistance program, helped with getting the COVID vaccinations, etc. So there's good things that can come from those programs. Employee termination is written about, talked about on page 175. Sexual harassment in the workplace. This is a huge thing. As a nurse, I do training on sexual harassment in my hospital, my schools that I teach for, and where else do I work? I feel like there's one more. Um, oh, the local, I volunteer at a local clinic. So I have to do all those trainings every year. It is never okay for that to occur at a workplace or anyway. Um, Page 176, providing employee references. So you have to be really careful if you who you choose to be your references, and always let that person know, because you would never want anybody to talk or speak negatively about you when you've added them to a resume or a reference list. So just kind of give that person a professional heads up and make sure that the relationship is good, and that you were a good candidate when you were with them, or you wouldn't want to put somebody unintentionally that's not going to give you a good reference. 176, writing letters of recommendation. Google is your best friend. Whenever previous students who have graduated, if I had them for a while and had them several classes and even went to clinicals such as that, if they need a reference, I get templates from Google and then add what I need to add regarding that person. Maintaining the employee personal file. Yes, this is very important. You don't ever get rid. Well, I don't know if the book has a certain time frame, or your facility might or might not, but best practice these days, I would not get rid of employee personnel files. The statute of limitations on, which should be essentially 3 years, maybe 5 with certain things. I feel like these days, 20 years later, people are bringing stuff up. So always, always keep your employee personnel files. You don't have to keep them in the office. You can put them in storage, or scan them, back them up on a cloud or a hard drive or whatever. But always good to know, just in case litigation comes out of nowhere 12, 15 years down the road. Okay, that's it on chapter 8, page 181. The chapter resources just caught my attention. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that is a great site to visit, and OSHA is very important. Department of Labor, there'll be different laws on that website. And of course, our American with the Disability Act. That's also very good to know, so you don't unintentionally discriminate against somebody. Hope y'all are having a good week.